He took a deposit big enough to buy a used car, spent one afternoon tearing my kitchen down to the studs, and then he did the thing he'd clearly done before. He stopped answering the phone. He was betting on my panic. A family with no kitchen, a hole where the sink used to be, and every day making the mess feel more permanent. He was sure that within a week I'd be calling him, begging, offering more money just to make him come back and finish. 4 months later, I did get my kitchen finished by a different, honest contractor. And the man who vanished didn't just pay me back. He lost the one thing worth more to him than my deposit. The license that let him take anyone's deposit at all. I didn't chase him. I didn't threaten him. I did the boring thing that men like him never see coming. I looked up the number printed on his own business card, and I learned who he really had to answer to. We'd saved for that kitchen for years. It wasn't a luxury remodel. It was a tired galley kitchen with cabinets from 3 decades ago and a floor that sloped just enough to make a dropped orange roll into the living room. We finally had enough set aside to do it right. We did what you're supposed to do. Got 3 quotes. Checked reviews. Picked the one in the middle. A man who showed up on time, spoke confidently about timelines, and had photos of beautiful kitchens on his phone. Let's call him Greg. Greg's contract asked for a deposit of 40% up front for materials, he said. That felt high, but he explained it the way confident people explain things, like only a fool would question it. He handed me a printed contract I signed, and I wrote the check. He tore the kitchen out 3 days later. One crew, one afternoon, brutally efficient. Cabinets gone, countertops gone, sink capped. Then his truck pulled away, and I stood in the dust feeling excited. That excitement lasted exactly until the following Monday when nobody came. Greg was good at the first act. That's the whole trick. The first week of silence, he had reasons. A material delay, a permit thing, a sick crew member. Each excuse was delivered warmly, with a promise of a start date that then quietly passed. The second week, the calls got shorter. By the third week, they went straight to voicemail, and the voicemail box was full. I drove past the job he'd mentioned, another house across town. His truck was there. He was working. Just not on my kitchen. Because my kitchen was already paid for, in his mind. He had my 40%. Finishing my job would cost him money. Starting a new job would bring in a fresh deposit. To Greg, my demolished kitchen wasn't an unfinished project. It was a closed sale. And the demolition was the leverage. He knew exactly what he was doing when he tore everything out first and did no real work after. A family staring at a hole where their kitchen used to be is a family that panics. He was counting on that panic to make me chase him with more money. He had picked, he thought, the easiest kind of target. Polite people with a deadline and a mess they couldn't live in. By week 4, the pressure was real. We were washing dishes in the bathtub. My kids thought it was an adventure for about 3 days and then very much did not. Every contractor I called to take over gave me the same wary look when I explained the situation and quoted me a premium to walk into another man's abandoned mess. When I finally reached Greg, one last time, from a number he didn't recognize, he answered by accident. And the mask came off. He told me these things take time. He told me if I kept, in his words, harassing him, he'd walk away from the job entirely and I could find someone else. He reminded me, almost cheerfully, the deposit was non-refundable. It said so right in the contract, and that materials had already been ordered. Which materials, I asked? He hung up. That night, I did not call him again. Instead, I sat down with the one thing he was sure I'd never really use. The contract he'd handed me so casually, and his business card. And I noticed something printed on both, small, in the corner, that Greg clearly thought was just decoration. A license number. Here's what Greg forgot, because men like Greg always forget it. In most places, you cannot just call yourself a contractor and take large deposits from families. You need a license, and a license isn't a decoration on a card, it's a leash. To get that license, Greg had to register with the state board. He had to carry a bond, a pool of money set aside specifically to pay customers he cheats. He had to agree to a set of rules about deposits, timelines, and abandonment. And that board has the power to do the one thing Greg actually fears. Not a lawsuit that takes years. The power to suspend the license that lets him take the next family's deposit next week. So I stopped thinking about Greg as a man dodging my calls. I started thinking about him as a license holder who had just violated, in writing, several of the rules he'd sworn to follow to get that license in the first place. And then I looked his number up in the state's public database. What I found told me everything. Greg's license was real, which was good, because it meant he had something to lose. And it came with a history, which was better. He'd had 2 prior complaints, both for the same thing, roughly. Deposits taken, work abandoned. Neither had gone far because both customers had done what most people do. They'd gotten angry, left a bad review, and given up. A review stings Greg's ego. It does not touch his license. He'd learned that lesson twice, and it had made him bolder. So I built the file the boards actually respond to, not emotion, documentation. Signed contract, with the deposit amount and the timeline circled. The canceled check, proving the deposit cleared. Dated photos of the demolished kitchen and the total lack of progress. A simple log of every missed start date and every call that went to voicemail. And a transcript of that last call where he admitted the job was stalled and told me to find someone else while keeping my money. Then I did 3 things in one afternoon, all legal, all on paper. I filed a formal complaint with the state contractor licensing board, citing the specific rules on abandonment and deposits. I filed a claim against his bond, the pool of money that exists for exactly this. And I filed a small claims case for the deposit because small claims is cheap, fast, and does not care how confident Greg sounds. 3 envelopes, 1 afternoon. And Greg didn't even know the ground had shifted yet. The board moved faster than I expected because a 3rd complaint for the same violation is a very different thing than the first. 2 customers giving up looks like bad luck. 3 customers documenting an identical pattern looks like a business model. The board sent Greg an official notice, not a suggestion, a demand that he respond in writing to a formal complaint with his license referenced at the top. For the first time in our entire relationship, Greg was the one who had to answer a piece of paper by a deadline or lose something. The bond claim did its own quiet work. The bonding company doesn't care about Greg's excuses either. They care about their exposure. A claim on his bond, backed by a signed contract and a canceled check, is a liability on their books. And bonding companies have a way of leaning on the contractor to make a claim disappear, because a paid claim makes Greg more expensive or uninsurable, which for a contractor is the same as unlicensed. And small claims set a court date, a real one, with a judge who would look at a signed contract, a cleared check, and photos of a demolished kitchen and ask Greg a very simple question he had no good answer to. Where's the work? 3 pressures from 3 directions, all pointing at the one thing Greg couldn't afford to lose. My phone rang on a Sunday. Greg's voice had lost all its confidence. You see, Greg had spent years learning that customers give up. What he'd never faced was a customer who understood that he had 3 different masters and that each of them could hurt him in a way I never could. I couldn't make Greg finish my kitchen. But the licensing board could end his ability to take deposits. The bond could cost him his insurability, and the court could put a judgment on his name that follows him to every future job. I didn't need leverage over Greg. I just needed to introduce Greg to the people he'd already promised to answer to. Greg opened the Sunday call the way they always do. Warm, apologetic. There'd been a misunderstanding. He'd been overwhelmed. He could come finish the kitchen next week, and could we, make the board thing and the court thing go away. I let him finish. Then I told him where things actually stood. I didn't want him back in my house. I'd already hired an honest contractor to finish the work, and I had the invoice. What I wanted was simple and written down. Full refund of my deposit, minus nothing, because he'd delivered nothing but demolition. And I told him plainly that the licensing complaint was not a bargaining chip I controlled anymore. It was filed. The board would reach its own conclusion about a 3rd identical complaint, whether I forgave him or not. He offered half. I said the court date was fine with me. He offered 80%. I said the bond claim was already in motion. Finally, quietly, he agreed to the full amount in a written settlement, paid before the court date, where the conversation never happened. The signed agreement and the payment arrived within the week. Greg had finally met a deadline. I got my deposit back in full. The honest contractor finished the kitchen beautifully, on time, for a fair price, and my kids stopped washing cereal bowls in the bathtub. But the refund was only my part of the story, because that 3rd complaint did what the first 2 never could. The board didn't just note it, they acted on the pattern. Greg's license was suspended pending a review of his deposit practices, which for a contractor in the middle of a busy season is a catastrophe. Every job he had lined up, every fresh deposit he was counting on, frozen. The bonding company, now holding a paid claim, repriced him into a corner. And the small claims judgment, even though he settled, left a very clear record of exactly who Greg was from the next customer who thought to look him up. The man who bet that a demolished kitchen would make me desperate discovered something he'd avoided learning for years. A deposit isn't just money, it's a promise attached to a license. Break the promise enough times, in writing, and the license is what pays the bill. Here's the detail I still smile about. When I filed with the board, they asked if I'd be willing to have my documentation included in their review. I said yes, and months later, a woman messaged me after finding Greg's suspension notice online while researching a contractor for her own remodel. She'd almost hired him, almost written the same 40% check. She didn't, because a boring public database, the one Greg thought was just a place his decoration number lived, now told the whole truth about him. My complaint hadn't just gotten my money back, it had become a warning sign, permanently posted, for the next family Greg would have chosen. The license Greg treated as decoration turned out to be the one thing that could speak louder than his confident smile. And for once, it told the truth. I never chased Greg. I never threatened him. Chasing was exactly what he wanted, because a chase is emotional, and emotion was the only game he knew how to win. Instead, here's the lesson I'd give anyone staring at a deposit that walked out the door: don't chase the person, find the leash. Look up the license. Learn that a bond exists for exactly this. Know that small claims is cheap and boards move on patterns. Document everything calmly and mail it to the 3 people your contractor already promised to answer to. Greg bet that a half-demolished kitchen would make me beg. It just made me organized. And organized, it turns out, is the one thing a man who lives on other people's panic was never built to survive. So tell me, has someone ever taken your money for work they never did? Tell me the story in the comments. I read every one. And if you believe the receipts always come due, hit subscribe, because here at Karma Files, they always do. Next time, after a storm damaged my roof, my insurance company looked at a claim they clearly owed and denied it in a single form letter, hoping I'd just go away. They didn't know I'd already read my own policy, word for word, and found the exact sentence they were pretending wasn't there.